Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Indigenous leaders are calling for the search of more mass graves following the recent discovery of more than 200 bodies of children at a former residential school. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation says employees at post-secondaries in our province received pay raises during the pandemic, including those at the U of L. We have the details. And U.S. President Joe Biden honors the fallen during a special Memorial Day message to veterans.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Indigenous leaders across the prairies are calling for search for more mass graves following news of 215 bodies discovered at the site of a former residential school in Kamloops, BC. In Saskatchewan, where the country's last residential school closed in 1997, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations called for ground searches at multiple sites where they say they've been informed of potential mass graves. Manitoba leader Wab Kinew says as a residential school survivor himself, the news hit home pretty hard. Kinew called for a commitment from every level of government to search the sites of all other residential schools. Rows of shoes were laid out on the staircase leading to a Vancouver art gallery recently in tribute of the 215 children whose remains were found at that residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. Some of the children were as young as 3 years of age. In remembrance and to honor those who lost their lives at the residential school in Kamloops, BC, flags were flying at half-mast at both Lethbridge City Hall and at the Lethbridge Police Station earlier today. Justice Minister Casey Medu has asked for more information from Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh in regards to a plan on how to improve things at the LPS. In a statement, the Lethbridge Police Commission said it is working with the Lethbridge Police Service to provide that information, which included requests of the Commission, which had not been asked for previously. The LPS has come under fire over the past few years for alleged incidents involving their former chief and some of their police officers. A 25-year-old Fort Macleod man faces charges following the death of a 33-year-old man from Brockett. RCMP say they arrested Cullen Drake Tailfeathers and charged him with manslaughter and break-and-enter in connection with the death of Lyndon Blair Greer. The incident occurred in the early morning hours of May 24th when police responded to a report of an injured male at a residence. When they arrived, they found Greer dead. Tailfeathers was remanded into custody and is scheduled to appear in provincial court on June the 2nd. For more than 35 years, Staff Sergeant Glenn Henry has served for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. After a long and impactful career, Wednesday will be his final day. Glenn Henry plans to retire in Coaldale, and as Ainsley O'Reilly explains, he's looking forward to seeing the younger generation fill his position, including young women like his own daughters.
I'll be sad to leave what I've done for, most of my life. It's nice to be able to help people. It's something I've always done. So when it comes to an end, in policing, it comes to an end quickly. You lose your appointment. You're no longer a police officer. You have to turn in your gun, your badge, and you walk away from what you've always done.
Sergeant Glenn Henry began his career in Regina and hopped around Saskatchewan for many years before relocating to the Northwest Territories. In the early 2000s, he took part in a United Nations mission to Kosovo.
A great opportunity for me to be able to come to these different communities and appreciate what we have.
In 2015, he came to Coaldale and currently oversees the Lethbridge, Coaldale, and Picture Butte detachments.
You don't train for, you just kind of learn as you go and manage the issues as they come.
Raymond RCMP's Sergeant Kevin Wright will take the reins on an interim basis. Glenn Henry's final shift will be Wednesday. And while he's looking forward to a new beginning in Coaldale, he will be paying close attention to the young careers of both of his daughters, who followed in their dad's footsteps.
I'm happy for them, and I'll certainly follow their careers with interest because they're just starting, and they'll have lots of experiences and stuff that I'll be proud to hear about.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
According to Lethbridge Transit, getting around town is going to be faster and more efficient thanks to a new redesign that is rolling out this fall. BCN's Naveen Day has the details about Transit's new CityLink network.
Lethbridge Transit introduced the CityLink pilot project Monday morning, which represents a total redesign of transit in Lethbridge. It focuses transit services on high-frequency and neighborhood lines. Low ridership areas would provide services on an on-demand basis, similar to an Uber service. General Manager for Lethbridge Transit Tim Sanderson says the redesign not only reduces costs of managing transit, but gets riders to their destinations more quickly.
Right now, if I want to go from, just as an example, if I want to go from the from Superstore out into to the university, for example, it's going to take me probably over an hour on the bus, and it's going to depend on time of day and everything like that. Under the CityLink system, that trip's going to take about 28 minutes. So cutting a lot of those travel times in half, not requiring people to transfer buses, having really quick corridors. What we want to do, and what my goal is to provide the best possible transit system for the budget that we're allowed.
One of the hallmarks of the CityLink system is a reduced amount of commute time to downtown and the university. Sanderson explains more about what they call the 10-10 system.
Under the CityLink system, it'll be a 10-minute bus ride from downtown to the university, and there'll be a bus available every 10 minutes in order to make that trip. So huge improvement over where we are now. Again, and it's something that we really think will be a benefit to the university, to downtown, and to everybody that is making that trip.
CityLink is scheduled to be implemented this September and is projected to reduce costs by up to $350,000. An interactive map of the new route system can be viewed online at getinvolvedlethbridge.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Last week, the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee heard concerns from a Lethbridge resident pertaining to the Last Chance Cat Ranch. Josh Rusumano says the city does not have proper measures or bylaws in place to address the issues of excessive numbers of cats in domestic buildings and is proposing that a new bylaw be put in place. The LCCR, which is located in a residential area close to where Rusumano lives, says the claims he made about the rescue shelter were exaggerated and untrue.
He claimed there were 100 cats in the house. There's only at this moment under 35 in the house and 12 in the garage, which is on the property. He said the house was uninhabitable and it's been well maintained. One of our volunteers' husbands looks after what needs to be looked after as far as the appliances and anything, the furnace, anything that needs to be fixed. Everything is maintained. There's just no truth to any of the things that he said.
The Lethbridge School Division released a statement today saying there are currently 5 COVID-19 outbreaks at schools and 2 alerts. An outbreak is when there are 5 or more cases confirmed at the school. The schools currently on outbreak status include Galbraith Elementary School, which has 16 cases, Emmanuel Christian Elementary School, which has 10 cases, Senator Buchanan has 5, Senator Fairburn Middle School has 13 cases, including 1 active, and Winston Churchill High School has 23 cases, including 2 active. The schools currently on alert are Chinook High School, which has 1 active case, and Colbanks Elementary, which has 1 but none active. Our province is reporting that the number of patients in hospital with COVID-19 has fallen to 478. The government said if there were fewer than 500 in hospital 2 weeks from now, at the same time the latest vaccinations take full effect, it will lift an array of health restrictions on June the 10th. Premier Jason Kenney says Albertans' efforts to stick to guidelines and to get vaccinated are paying off. A new report has identified 42 recommendations that would help transform and modernize Alberta's facility-based continuing care system. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says of the recommendations, they include enhancing public reporting on continuing care inspections, phased out share rooms in continuing care facilities, providing direction to support couples to remain living together in continuing care homes, and to provide funding to support Indigenous groups for continuing care services in the communities where they live.
The recommendations will improve the quality of life for residents and families. In fact, it puts quality of life right at the front, right at the center of these recommendations, and the work environment for staff and for operators, and help us to make use of better use of taxpayers' dollars. The report also takes into account the lessons of the pandemic and its impacts on the residents and their families, on the staff and the operators.
The report also said the need for continuing care services in Alberta will grow by 62% by the year 2030. For this week's poll question, we are asking if you are happy with the Alberta government's Open for Summer plan and the 3 stages. As of June 1st, restaurants are allowed to reopen their patios once again. I can't wait. Log on to our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll have the results for you on Friday evening's newscast. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation released documents showing more than 11,500 university and college employees received pay raises in 2020 during the lockdowns at the height of the pandemic. The group says it cost taxpayers and students $29 million. While compensation for workers in Alberta declined about 10% from 2014 through 2020, total compensation paid to post-secondary employees increased nearly 9%. Franco Terrazzano is the federal director and the Alberta director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and he says the increases also took place at the University of Lethbridge.
At the U of L, about 563 employees received a pay raise during lockdowns in 2020. Now that cost taxpayers and students close to $1.4 million last year. And if you look at the pay raises at the U of L going back to 2015, when the downturn in Alberta began, the cost of pay raises is close to $9.5 million. And you know, it's really not fair to be asking struggling families and struggling students to be paying a higher bill so that these professors and bureaucrats can collect bigger paychecks. So we need to see the Alberta government push for savings here. And clearly the cupboards aren't that bare at this school.
Terrazzano adds Alberta spends $36,510 per post-secondary student, which is $10,000 more per student than what the other large provinces spend on average. Bikers Building Bridges is a group dedicated to helping the less fortunate in Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta. They often coordinate food and toy rides. Chris Plum is a member of the Bikers Building Bridges, and he sums up what it is that they do in our community.
It's basically our way to kind of get rid of the stigma on bikers. A lot of people don't see, a group of bikers riding around and think, oh, they must be doing some charity work or, helping somebody. They think they're maybe out for a ride or, just out doing their thing. So we kind of want to bridge the community between the nonprofits and the different charities and groups to help everybody get connected with the resources they need and, to do as much good as we can.
Catch the full interview with Chris Plum from Bikers Building Bridges and Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our newscast. The next time you're driving down a residential street in Calgary, you better slow down. As of today, the speed limit on residential roads has been lowered from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour. City officials are hoping this will make city streets safer and reduce accidents. Officials say about 25% of Calgary's collisions happen in residential neighborhoods, which adds up to around 9,100 collisions per year. They say that out of those accidents, 550 people are hurt or killed each and every year. City officials say slowing down will give drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians more time to react. Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi says while the Stampede is set to go this July, it won't look like the festival of years past. Nenshi says there will be changes in rules to keep people safe from COVID-19. His comments come following Premier Jason Kenney's Open for Summer announcement. Stampede officials say the chuck wagon races will not go ahead this year because the riders have not had a chance to compete recently, and it would be far too dangerous for them and the horses to go from no competition to high-stakes racing. 2 people are dead following an avalanche this weekend at Jasper National Park. A spokesperson with Parks Canada says the slab avalanche occurred Sunday morning on Mount Andromeda in the Columbia Icefield. Police say efforts are being made with the Office of the Medical Examiner to confirm the identities of those who died. A grizzly bear that attacked and killed an Alberta woman last week was caught over the weekend. Officials say there were plans to euthanize it. Alberta Fish and Wildlife say a DNA sample from the bear linked to the attack near Water Valley on May 25th. A post by the agency on social media says the bear was mature, not lactating, and her teeth were extremely worn, which means the bear was likely older. It also concluded that this grizzly was not the same bear that killed a man in the Wipers area earlier in May. Some good news in Saskatchewan. It's reporting the fewest people in hospital with COVID-19 since November the 28th. The news came on Sunday, which was the same day Saskatchewan took the first step on its reopening roadmap. Private gatherings of up to 10 people are now allowed. Public indoor gatherings may also have up to 30 people, and public outdoor gatherings can have up to 150 people. Restrictions on outdoor sports have also been relaxed. Today is Memorial Day in the United States. U.S. President Joe Biden marked his first Memorial Day weekend by honoring those who sacrificed so much for their country.
I want to reaffirm my long-standing belief. We may have many obligations as a nation, but we only have one truly sacred obligation, and that's to equip those we send into harm's way with all they need and care for them and their families when they return home and when they don't. But those names etched on that wall and every other wall and tombstone in America of veterans is the reason why we're able to stand here. We can't kid ourselves about that. And so I hope that the nation comes together. We're not Democrats or Republicans today. We're Americans.
A hot topic of discussion right now appears to be UFOs and aliens. There have allegedly been a number of recent sightings of unidentified flying objects, especially in the United States. Ian Juby hosts a show here on Miracle Channel called Genesis Week, and he'll have a special report on some of those sightings and what they really mean.
While the sheer volume of UFO reports is being released to the public through even mainstream media has been very much like drinking from the fire hose the past couple of months, most people don't realize this is actually old news. Now, just last week, CBS's longtime running TV show, 60 Minutes, aired dramatic interviews with former U.S. military personnel. Two F-18 pilots gave their first-hand testimony on their now declassified UFO encounter, described as a tic-tac shaped drone about the size of their own aircraft, so quite large. But this tic-tac drone moved in impossible ways. These drones were being tracked for weeks by a nearby ship's radar, and when the targets once again appeared on radar while the aircraft were up for a training mission, the pilots were then sent to investigate. Notice, this was multiple sensors, radar, infrared cameras, and of course, the eyes of 4 individuals on board the 2 aircraft. The UFO was first spotted on radar at about 80,000 feet altitude and descending to sea level in about 1 second. Now, I did the maths. 80,000 feet is about 15 miles. 15 miles per second? That works out to over 54,000 miles per hour, or 86,400 kilometers per hour. By comparison, the lowly International Space Station maintains its orbit going a measly 27,575 kilometers an hour in the vacuum of space. We all saw what happened to the Space Shuttle Columbia upon re-entering the very thin upper atmosphere at 16,700 miles per hour. But these tic-tac shaped drones were flying more than 3 times that hypersonic speed through sea level atmosphere. But Commander Fravor first spoke publicly about this incident in 2017 on Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News Network. At that time, Fravor said the tic-tac drone was not from this world. The entire incident itself happened in 2004, almost 17 years ago. So many are understandably asking the questions. Is it really not from this world? Why is all of this coming out now? These are some of the questions we'll be exploring in the 4-part Genesis Week special report on UFOs, aliens, and Genesis, airing here on the Miracle Channel this Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and again on Friday at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
Looking forward to watching the specials on UFOs. Well, it felt a lot like summer today, lots of sunshine, and we were once again over 20 degrees, and the mercury will be climbing even higher soon. Complete weather details are coming up. You know, there was a classic song by Seals and Crofts, I think it was called Summer Breeze, and it makes me feel fine. Well, that breeze felt pretty good today, and it'll feel even better later this week. Jeanette Roche is here now with a complete look at our weather forecast. Jeanette, we were over 20 degrees today, and we could be hitting 30 or higher tomorrow and Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you love hot summer scorching temperatures, then you're in for a treat. If you don't like them so much, then you're gonna have to brace yourself because we are in for a real hot one this week. Starting with tomorrow, Tuesday, sunshine, 30 degrees. Then we're just climbing from here on out into midweek. We're looking at a high of 34 on Tuesday, 36 on Thursday. Now, I was looking at the record breakers for those 2 days, and we could certainly break some records this week because the records are lower than those temperatures. We're looking at 29 on Friday and then back down to 23 on Saturday. Starting Saturday night, we're looking at a 30% chance of showers in through Sunday there. So expecting that rain on a Sunday with a high of 18 degrees. So we're just kind of climbing, building that pressure of humidity and then ending up with the rain at the end of that 7-day forecast. So average high for this time of year, 20 degrees. We're gonna be well above that, obviously. 7 degrees was our average low. 30 degrees was the high temperature on this day back in 1956, and in 1982 we had our lowest, which was -1. 16 hours of daylight is what we're having today. Sun rose this morning at 5:29, and sunset will be right at 9:29 p.m. So there you go, right on the dot, exactly 16 hours. Let's take a look at what's happening on the West Coast. Lots of sunshine tomorrow, 24 in Victoria, a little bit cooler by the water, 22 Vancouver, but as you move more inland, we're looking at 31 degrees there. 27 the high in Edmonton tomorrow, lots of sunshine. Same thing for Calgary tomorrow, sunny and 27 degrees. A beautiful day if you like the sunshine. Definitely get out the sunscreen, absolutely. The rest of the prairies also remaining very hot. Sunny in Saskatoon, 28 the high. Same thing for Regina, 28 also the high in Winnipeg. Winnipeg experiencing a little bit more wind though, and a mix of sun and cloud. Now as we get into central Canada here, mix of sun and cloud expected in Toronto, high of 25 degrees. Still sticking with the humidex there. 26 the high in Ottawa with sunny skies. Montreal should be clearing throughout the day there. 26 the high as well. Montreal expecting a little bit more wind as well, up to 40 kilometer per hour gusts. 19 is the high in Fredericton tomorrow. Halifax expecting some rain, 18 degrees the high. 17 in Charlottetown with some drizzle. Also rain expected tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 19 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you by Jeff Reimer of Royal LePage South Country Real Estates, 403-380-1779.
The president of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association says beef producers are finally able to turn the page on the mad cow era, which he says brought unprecedented hardship to the industry. Bob Lowe says around 26,000 producers left the industry entirely between 2006 and 2011, and more than 8,000 square kilometers of pasture lands were converted to other uses during that same time frame. The comments came after the World Organization for Animal Health voted to approve Canada's bid for the negligible risk designation for its beef industry. It is the most favorable category, which requires proof of extensive control and surveillance measures, along with at least 11 years since the birth of the last infected animal. American tire manufacturer Goodyear Tire and Rubber is facing accusations of unpaid wages, unlawful overtime, and threats to foreign workers at its Malaysian factory. A recent report says 6 current and former foreign workers from the Malaysia's Labor Department says Goodyear made incorrect salary deductions, required excessive hours, and denied workers full access to their passports. The department confirmed that it had fined Goodyear last year for overworking and underpaying foreign employees. The allegations involving 185 foreign workers filing complaints against the company first came to light in 2019. Canadian National Railway has been fined $100,000 and pleaded guilty for failing to obtain the needed authorization to apply pesticide along its tracks. BC's Conservation Officer Service says in August of 2017, a CN contractor sprayed pesticide along 150 kilometers of track between Terrace and Prince Rupert. Federal officials say CN must comply with BC's Integrated Pesticide Management Act, which requires consultation with the public and First Nations before use. Toys R Us is joining forces with fashion designer Joe Fresh to launch a new Rise Little Earthling line of clothing for children. Officials say the collection for newborns to age 6 features playful graphics and has the look of a more upscale brand at an accessible price. Toys R Us executives say the company is also looking at potentially expanding into other categories, including home and pet products. Retail analysts say the new clothing collection is just what millennial parents are looking for, but Toys R Us must update its stores to better compete with Amazon and Walmart. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 121 points in the day to finish at 19,731. The Dow was up 64 points to 34,529. The S&P 500 was up 3 points to 4204, and the Nasdaq was up 12 points on the day to 13,749. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 59 cents to 66.91 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 5 cents to 3.04 US. Gold was down 12 cents to 19.0676 US an ounce, and silver was up 2 cents to 28.04 US an ounce. Wheat is at $338 per metric ton, barley's at $344, canola's at $707, and corn is at $403 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 48 cents to $115.88. Feeder cattle were down $1.50 to $151.35. and lean hogs were up $1.53 to $117.25. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 82.89 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, our province is reporting that the number of patients in hospital with COVID-19 has fallen to below 500. The government said if there were fewer than 500 in hospital 2 weeks from now, at the same time the latest vaccinations take full effect, it will lift an array of health restrictions on June the 10th. There's a group in Lethbridge which does a lot to change the perception of bikers. Coming up, Jeanette Rocher chats with Chris Plum from Bikers Building Bridges, who explains how they help those less fortunate in our city.
Well, now that the weather has warmed up, we're seeing motorcycles on our roads once again, and we probably all need a reminder to drive cautiously, watch out for those bikers. Joining us to talk about motorcycle safety and awareness is Chris Plum, who is a spokesperson for Bikers Building Bridges right here in Lethbridge. Chris, welcome to the show. So great to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, can you tell us a bit about Bikers Building Bridges? What is it and what does your organization do?
Bikers Building Bridges is a nonprofit. We're a registered nonprofit in Lethbridge. We work primarily with youth at risk. So we do needle cleanup, special events that are all free for the community. We did the trunk or treat last Halloween at the exhibition, had about 800 cars come through full of kids, and they got tons and tons of candy. It was all COVID friendly, and that was free to the kids. We also had a drive through with Santa so they could get their pictures taken during, these times where it just wasn't really accessible to go to a mall and get that done. And then we have a mentor program that runs out at Canadian Mixed Martial Arts when the gyms are open, of course. And we had 5 kids go through last year, the year before, sorry, and they just learned some jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and meet other friends there. And you gain that, self-discipline to learn a new thing and the confidence to take on the world, basically, and realize that, it's not always how it is in school where kids can, be mean and have bad words towards you. And you meet the right kids and get the right environment going.
I love that. So your organization is all about building those bridges with the community. I know before the interview we were talking about the name of your organization, Bikers Building Bridges, and how you guys came up with that name.
Yeah, and it's basically our way to kind of get rid of the stigma on bikers. A lot of people don't see, a group of bikers riding around and think, oh, they must be doing some charity work or, helping somebody. They think they're maybe out for a ride or, just out doing their thing. So our name, we kind of want to bridge the community between the nonprofits and the different charities and groups to help everybody get connected with the resources they need and, to do as much good as we can.
That's awesome. Now, do you have any upcoming events that we should know about?
We have some that we're trying to plan. With COVID. We're not putting anything really into, a concrete state just because things change so quickly.
It's so hard to plan anything these days, isn't it?
It is. We're going to do our trunk or treat and our drive through with Santa towards the end of the year again as well. We have space reserved for that at the exhibition parking lot as well. Last year we had about 20 trunks for our Halloween. We're hoping to double that, so even more candy for more kids.
Yeah.
And we're looking at a couple of summer projects, hopefully to go through if COVID restrictions get moved. We have our annual superhero ride for Kelly, which goes out to the Children's Hospital every year. And then we have our mentor program that we're actually going to increase as soon as the gym opens to take on about 30 kids rather than the 5.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, fingers crossed that everything works out for this summer and planning and everything. So for any viewers who wonder what it is that makes people want to ride a motorcycle, or for anyone thinking about buying a bike, tell us why you love to ride, Chris.
I just like the freedom. You can get on it and, go anywhere you want. You see sights you never would have thought of going to in a car or a truck. Sometimes you just get on and go to random spots for no reason whatsoever, but to get out and have fun and feel the wind in your face and relax and, leave the cares of work or any problems you're having somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I bet you end up finding little communities and things that you normally wouldn't see, and so it's kind of cool in that way.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely find out where the good burgers are.
Oh, absolutely. Now, statistics tell us that driving a motorcycle is more dangerous, of course, than driving a car or truck. So almost 2/3 of collisions involving a motorcycle result in injury or death. So what's the main issue? Is it that motorcycles are much less visible than other vehicles?
Um, well, motorcycles, they definitely are less visible. It depends on the type of the bike. When you get some of the Harleys and the Roadsters, they're fairly loud, so you definitely know they're coming. Um, a lot of it, it's due to people being distracted behind the wheel on their phone. I can't tell you how many times I've come up beside somebody and they're texting or talking on their phone and don't even realize that you're there. And there could be a group of 5 or 6 of you right beside them, and kind of startles them when they realize you're there. And speed sometimes and driving beyond your ability is a major factor in some of those accidents as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Now, what should drivers be on the lookout for? Should they be double checking blind spots or looking twice? A lot of times we're not thinking about those motorbikes, are we?
Yeah, definitely shoulder checking. I find a lot of people don't end up shoulder checking, and they don't see you. You're sometimes farther over in the lane, so accidents do happen. One good thing to do is if you're driving with kids, you teach them to count the motorbikes that they see, and call them out. And that's going to transition them later on when they're adults to automatically identify that there are the smaller vehicles on the road.
That's a great idea. Instead of I spy, it's like count the motorcycles, and then that way it helps the driver for sure
Exactly.
stay more alert. And then the kids are feeling like they're contributing, and it gets them off of the screen time too, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, a little more interaction, and there's plenty of different games you can do with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Now, when it comes to passing a motorcycle, is there a right way and a wrong way to do this?
You definitely want to make sure you give that cyclist, some room. You don't want to crowd into the lane, or you tend to go where you're looking. So if you're looking at the guy on the motorbike, you may start veering towards him, and that can both scare the rider and the person driving real quick. And if that's taking your eyes off the street, something could happen in front of you, and then you're going to react by trying to go into a different lane, and that's no good for anybody in that situation.
No, exactly. Now, you had mentioned before that you might be going a little too fast. So, and this is interesting because sometimes we forget that motorcycles have faster acceleration and also they slow down a lot quicker, right?
They do, depending on the rider's ability.
Okay.
Definitely, one of the major tips I have for anybody is don't drive outside your ability. If you're a new rider the first couple of years, you want to definitely stay with that speed limit and give yourself extra time anytime you're going anywhere. Maybe not ride with somebody on the back right away, because that can change the situation quite a bit as well. And just ride like everybody's out to get you, and you'll notice what's around you.
Yeah. So, what's your advice for bikers to stay safe? Is it to wear highly visible reflective gear, for example?
They can. It does work. Usually, it really depends on your driving ability. If you're going way too fast for the situation or the conditions, then you're going to cause more problems on your own than you want. But my number one tip for anybody on a motorbike is, again, ride like everybody's out to get you, and be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the conditions, dress for the ride, right? You don't want to be wearing shorts and a tank top, because if you wipe out, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we've all seen it. We've seen those bikers out there with shorts and tank tops and t-shirts. Is that unsafe? And you just answered the question.
Yeah, most definitely. You always see bikers in leather. It's not really for the look. It's more for the safety. That leather is
Yeah.
going to protect you when you're sliding on the road.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Now, what about roads that have sand and gravel on them, or bumpy roads or potholes? How do bikers navigate that?
It can get tricky sometimes. If you're in an area that you're not familiar with, sometimes you can come up onto where a highway will end and it's gravel or it's construction. So that comes back down to being aware of your surroundings and driving for the conditions. If it's a road you're not familiar with 100%, you're not going to go racing down it, or be looking at the scenery as much. You're going to be paying a little bit more attention to what's in front of you.
Yeah, that's got to be hard, especially when you hit those mountain roads and stuff and it's so beautiful all around you. But like any driver, right? Stay safe, focus on the road in front of you. What about, yeah, what about driving at night? I would imagine that would likely present some more challenges.
It does. You're definitely less visible at night. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself even more room around other vehicles that are around you. Make sure that when you're coming up beside of a vehicle, you look at the driver and see that they're looking at you. If you can see their eyeballs, they can see you. So you know that they know you're there. If you do come up beside a car and that driver's distracted or doesn't see you, hasn't made eye contact you, it's usually a good idea to get out of that positioning and either be in front of the car if you're in a lane beside it or behind it, and just take your time and get to your destination safe.
Yeah, that's great advice. What about wet roads or foggy weather conditions?
Yeah, that comes again to riding within your skill level. If it's, I've ridden in some rainstorms where visibility is very low. I've lowered my speed way down to accommodate for that. Having a good helmet that doesn't fog up, and definitely wearing the right equipment for the wet weather so you're not getting soaked to the bone, and having good tires that aren't worn out so you have a little bit more traction, staying out of the big puddles, and just driving for the conditions like you would in a car.
Right, basically common sense, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, there are electric motorcycles and scooters out there. And of course, one disadvantage is that they're not only hard to see, but they're also hard to hear. Any thoughts on this?
I actually haven't come across any electric motorbikes quite yet. The scooters, I find usually there are a lot of younger kids on them who may not have the experience. So they definitely want to stay in the center of that lane when they're riding it and make sure they know everything that's going on around them. Don't be listening to headphones or have your phone mounted where you can see what's going on with that.
Right.
Just concentrate on the task at hand and getting where you're going.
That's really good advice, especially for those younger, more inexperienced riders or drivers. Definitely, especially with that distraction with the screen. Absolutely. So what would you say to a viewer who would like to take up motorcycling? How do you get started? Who should you talk to?
You can talk to your local bike communities. They'll give you a lot of information. The reps at the stores will usually help you out. If it's your first bike, definitely take a course, rider safety course. They have them out here at the Lethbridge College. I know there's some in Calgary at the schools there and some private ones as well. That'll definitely help increase your awareness and increase your ability. And don't buy a bike that's too big for learning on.
Yeah. What kind of motorcycles should you start learning on?
A lot of people will go on a 750cc or an 1100cc bike. They're usually lighter, a little bit easier to control, a little bit lower to the ground. Once you get into the bigger bikes, you've got just more weight and more power, and it can be harder to learn on.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, bikers have traditionally been more of a guy thing, but are you seeing more women getting involved these days?
Yeah, for sure. I know in Lethbridge there's a couple of only women's groups that ride. In our group, our wives all ride with us, and they're currently learning how to ride their own motorcycles as well, so that they can, have that same freedom as well. I definitely encourage anybody to ride, no matter if you're male or female, or older or younger. It's a good skill to learn. I think personally, it increases your ability while you're driving, because you're definitely more aware of what's going on to you when you're driving your regular car or a truck.
Interesting, absolutely. And then you hear of families that sometimes say that like a son, brothers, the dads, they all kind of take off on motorcycle trips together. I would imagine it's a good bonding experience.
Yeah, you definitely get close with the people you ride with. That's for sure.
Yeah, great for those married couples, like you were saying with the wives.
It is. Yeah, I know my wife likes going on the back of my bike, and we'll just do random day trips and overnights once in a while to different places. And, you see things normally you would never see, and it's just nice and quiet. There's no distractions, and you have fun.
Awesome. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. I might have to take up a new hobby.
Yeah, it's a great hobby. It gets expensive. There's always something to add to your motorbike, but
Absolutely.
it is a good hobby.
Thanks so much for your time today, Chris. We really appreciate
Yeah,
you
for
being
sure.
on. Chris Plum is a spokesperson for Bikers Building Bridges right here in Lethbridge. We're living in one of the most chaotic times in history. Many are struggling with depression and stress, and perhaps we're losing hope. Today's guest joins us from the Vancouver area to offer some hope to us. Grace Fox is a conference speaker and a member of the First Five writing team for Proverbs 31 Ministries and is the author of Finding Hope in Crisis, Devotions for Calm in Chaos. Welcome to Bridge City News. Grace, so great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you start by saying that you've had enough trials in life to make your writing credible. So what have you faced in recent years?
Well, the most life-changing event that happened to me actually was when I was in my early 20s, and I've never been the same. It actually, I think, put me on the trajectory that I'm on. And that was living in Nepal and working with my husband there. We were fairly newly married, but we had our first child was born there, and that was fine. Very different, though, taking him from a mission hospital back to our mud and rock hut with a grass thatch roof with no electricity or running water. And when he was 20 months old, our second child was born at the mission hospital, and she was born with a condition called hydrocephalus, which is too much water on the brain. And when the doctors realized what was going on, they just said, you have to go back to North America on the first available flight, which would actually have been 3 days from then. But when the airlines found out that I'd had a C-section, they said, you're a medical high risk and we don't want you on the plane. But my husband wrapped that baby in a blanket. We gave him a bottle of express breast milk and a diaper bag. He got a ticket for himself and he took that baby home while I was left behind. And I had to stay there for another week, not knowing if I'd see my daughter alive again or not. I remember in that very, very dark moment, just crying out to God and saying, what is it you want me to learn in this? What is this? And he spoke to me by reminding me of that old hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. Just reminding me that he wasn't promising me that my daughter would live or what her quality of life would be if she did live, but he reminded me that he would be faithful. And I hung on to that. So the next couple of years were really rough. My daughter did live, but she had about a dozen surgeries, and she had brain surgery, and she had meningitis when she was 11 months old. So it was a rough ride, but God was faithful. And in these times of crises, I've had a few more since then, losing my mobility a few years ago for several months, and just last fall, losing my mom in a very sudden turn of events, other things too in between. But hanging on to that hope that is found in the truth that God is faithful no matter what. He's there with us.
Yeah, what an incredible story you have, Grace. Now, many people are living with a sense of despair and don't know how to pull out of it. So what's worked for you in the past?
So when I find that sense of heaviness just coming in on me, I find that I have to go back to the promises in the scriptures. And sometimes in those crisis times, I know that we can't even remember whether or not we've had the last meal. And it's hard to remember what day of the week it is sometimes. We get so caught up with those concerns that are pressing us at that moment. And so I say, it's good to just find one promise from the word, write it out on a recipe card, and just keep it with you. Again, another thing that I do, a practical thing, is just to put my earbuds in and I go with my phone. I go for a walk and I tune into a praise and worship station. So I listen to that music. And even if I can walk 10 minutes or 15 minutes, just whatever I can get in is good. Because for one, it's the exercise that works as well, rather than just staying inside in that confined space and stuffy air. Sometimes get out, get a bit of fresh air, get those hormones going with exercise, and listen to the praise and worship music to refocus my thoughts. Because if I'm just focused on the worries, I'm going to go down into a dark place. But if I focus on the one who's in control of those worries, of my situation, then I can pull myself out of it. And and another one would be to call somebody, because we don't have to go through this alone. The enemy of our soul will try to make us think that nobody else has time and nobody else cares. But when people know that we're in trouble and we make ourselves, we're just honest with other people, how we're doing, then we can have somebody pray with us and help carry that burden, because we just can't do that by ourselves.
Yeah. Now, your devotion is called Calm in Chaos, right? So how did that come about? How did you start writing devotionals?
Oh, I started writing devotionals, 15 years ago, and I've had quite a few published, but this one is a little bit different than the others that I've done in that they're very short readings. Some people who've done this say that they take them maybe a minute and a half to read. And I wrote them especially for people facing crisis, because again, like I say, I know what it's like to be in those moments where we're so caught up with the responsibilities or the needs, and it's just hard to recall. It's hard to focus on a long passage of scripture, but a verse is doable. And so I wrote these little scriptures. I've got this little book right here. I wrote them with people like that in mind so that they can focus on one nugget and carry it with them through the day. And almost every one of those readings go back to, who's God in this? Who's God? What's he like? Because if we remember that he's faithful, and if we remember that he's strong and wants to share that strength with us, if we remember that he is a God who is good and wise and sovereign, it just helps us walk through those really difficult times.
What do you think is God's solution to worry?
Oh, I love this. I really believe that it's found in Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Let me read you those scriptures. Do not be anxious about anything. That's easier said than done. But in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so I say it's like a mathematical equation. So you've got your elements on one side of the equal sign, and then the summation on the other side of the equal sign. So there's 3 elements on the left side of that equal sign, and they would be, don't worry about anything. And I say, I remember being a crossing guard when I was in 6th grade, going out there, and I was able to put out my little red paddle that said stop, right? And I'd hold that up towards the cars coming at me. And oh, the power I felt as a 6th grade girl, being able to stop traffic, right?
Yeah.
But we can do the same thing with those worries, to just say, stop it right there. I'm not giving you access to my mind. You're not getting in. So that would be step 1. Step 2
That's a
on
good
that
visual.
would be, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
just hold
I
that
can
paddle
just
up
see
that
you
says
with that.
stop. And the second one then is to pray about everything, no matter how small it seems, just lay it out before the Lord. The third thing is with thanksgiving. And so we might say, give thanks in the middle of this crisis. Are you kidding me? What do I give thanks for? But it's those things, it's like that God is faithful, that his promises are true, that he will never leave us or forsake us, that he hears our cries for help. Those are the things for which we can be thankful. And so each of those things, when we put them into practice, equal peace. And if any one of those 3 things are missing, we're not going to end up with peace as the sum. So I believe that's God's solution to worry. Say no to those worries, pray, give thanks, and then we experience peace.
So why do you think that it's life's hard places that change us? Is that God's plan all along, do you think, to make us stronger?
You know, we live in a broken world where those hard places come. And God, whether God ordains them or whether he allows them, theologians would even disagree on that. And so I don't spend my time trying to figure out that, whether he allowed this or he ordained it in a hard place. But I believe that he can take those hard places and use them for our good. So we as believers can just roll Romans 8:28 off our tongue, kind of as a pat answer in the hard places, that all things work together for our good. But verse 29, right in the center of it, there's this little nugget that I'd missed for years and years and years. Right in the middle of it, it says about becoming more like Christ, being conformed to Christ's image. That is what we can look forward to. And that is what God wants to happen when we go through those hard places, is we can become better or we can become bitter. And we want to become we want to become better. That was a slip of the tongue.
I knew what you meant.
Better by becoming more like Jesus, more patient, more compassionate towards others who are going through suffering as well, more understanding of the needs of others.
Yeah, I think
More-
as humans too, we have that tendency to pull back and withdraw in times of crisis. But this is not helpful, is it? It's actually hurting us.
It is. Here's the visual that I get with that concept. I always think of like a flock of sheep out in the pasture, and there's a little lamb, and the little lamb just moves away from that flock of sheep, maybe just wandering away, eating its grass, and it wanders away. And if there's a coyote, or a wolf, some kind of a predator close by, they are going to be watching for the most vulnerable member of that flock. And it's going to be that little lamb that's strayed away from the flock. And we make ourselves vulnerable to the enemy when we wander away from the support that we could have by staying in connection with other people. Because he will come after us. And he will do that by putting the thoughts into our head that no one else cares, everybody's too busy. And if I tell anybody how I'm going through a hard time right now, what will they think of me? They might think that I'm inadequate or weak. I don't want to be considered weak, so I'm not going to talk about this with anybody. But we need to get past that thinking and stay in fellowship with others.
Yeah, I love that visual with the little lamb. It really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? So how do we see beyond our own pain when that's where we're living at the moment?
We have to, for one thing, remember that it's not going to last forever. If we get caught in that present time of a hard place and all we're thinking of is never going to end. Again, that's a thought that the enemy will put into our minds to discourage us. I'm never going to get past this. It's never going to end. It's never going to get better. But remember that in scripture, there are promises too that say, this will not last forever. This will pass. There's a greater glory that lies ahead. And if we remember that this too will pass and the pain will not last forever, we may have to develop a new normal for whatever our circumstances have brought our way. But God will give us the strength to move forward. He's not going to leave us in that hard place of despair. That's just not what he plans for us.
Mm-hmm. Any advice on worrying about the future? A lot of people tend to fret about what's to come, and especially these days when life is just, like you said, it's so chaotic, isn't it?
Yes, it is chaotic, and there's so many uncertainties. When is this going to end? We don't know. And we don't know what the new normal is going to look like when things finally settle down. We just don't. And so we can't bank anything on it because it's so uncertain. And so we can get caught up in those thoughts of what if it never happens, that we, what if? But that's where the fear tends to grow. And so when the what ifs come, I like to encourage people to say, even if that worst what if comes to pass, we can hang on to even if that worst thing comes to pass, God's presence is still with us. Even if it goes on for another year, God will never leave us or forsake us. He will be with us every moment of every day.
Right. And in your book, I kind of like this because you remind us that even in the midst of this pandemic, that God never practices social distancing, but still we need that human contact, don't we?
Yeah, and we can look at technology kind of as it can be an addiction for us. It can consume us, but we can harness that and we can use it to our advantage. And so my husband always says, aren't we glad that if we have to go through a pandemic, it's now and not one that was 100 years ago? Because we've got Zoom. This is amazing. We can be 800 or 900 miles away from each other to do an interview like this, but we can connect because of Zoom, and we can connect with our loved ones the same way. We might get zoomed out at some points, but we can, step back, take a little break, and then get back to it again, or Skype or FaceTime, or we have so many options at this point to stay connected. And so if you get fatigued, just pull back a little bit if you need to, but don't pull back forever. Stay in connection with individuals. Pray with other people. My husband and I meet with a couple almost every Monday evening just to pray. And we've done that for years. So even though we haven't seen each other maybe but once in the last 15 months, we've been able to stay connected and we pray via Zoom. I'm part of a women's Bible study group every Wednesday morning with women all over the States. I'm the only Canadian in that, but we still meet like this. And I've been leading a Zoom women's Bible study every Tuesday evening with women from all over Canada and the States. And it's possible. It's possible. We can do this.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for being with us today, Grace. You have so much wisdom that you've shared. I love it. I love hearing from you.
Thank you. If people want to stay in touch with me, they can connect by going to my website, gracefox.com. They can register to sign up, subscribe free for my weekly devotional blog or even for my monthly free newsletter too.
That's great. Thank you. Grace Fox is the author of Finding Hope in Crisis, Devotions for Calm in Chaos. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.